after I die, my childhood sweetheart lost his memory due to the shock. The girl who secretly loved him deleted our chat records, burned my photos, and erased all traces of my existence. She told him that she was the one who had been by his side for 8 years, the one he had secretly loved for 7 years. He believed her, because the confession ring fit perfectly on her finger. Chapter 1. On the 7th day after I died, my childhood sweetheart of 7 years proposed to someone else. It was his university classmate, Molly, who had confessed to him just last month and been rejected. Michelin-starred restaurant, candlelight, red wine. Jason was the campus heartthrob in university, but today he was unusually dressed in a shirt and suit, looking much thinner, with sharper features. Molly wore a wine-red suspender dress, alluring and sexy. I glanced down at the blood-stained white dress I was wearing. It turns out Jason didn't like my type. When Jason presented a bouquet of sunflowers and the ring, Molly furrowed her brows slightly. "Aren't sunflowers your favorite?" "Yes, I just love them too much." It turns out Molly, like me, also loves sunflowers with cream. The ring Jason used to confess was so beautiful that, as if compelled by a supernatural force, I reached out to try it on. Oh, too big. But the size of that ring was spot on, fitting perfectly on Molly's hand, the large, clean diamond sparkling on her finger. In the candlelight, Jason's eyes were gentle as he earnestly confessed to her. "I had this ring prepared a long time ago, but you didn't show up that day, didn't answer the phone. I thought that for these 7 years, it was all just wishful thinking on my part. I've known you for 8 years, loved you for 7. I believe I now have the ability to give you a happy and stable life. Are you willing to be with me?" I stared blankly at Jason. I remember Molly was just his university classmate. And today marks 8 years and 7 days since we met. But that ring fits Molly so perfectly. Maybe I was just delusional, perhaps they had known each other for a long time. After dinner, under the streetlights, Jason gently rubbed her head, and Molly lifted her head to kiss him. Jason hesitated and instinctively moved away, saying, "I'm sorry. We've never even held hands before, so." Molly's face stiffened, she said it was okay, and to take it slow. Jason hugged her, kissed her on the forehead. She waved goodbye to Jason with a smile as she walked to the corner. She looked indifferent and forcefully threw the sunflower bouquet into the trash. How ominous. Closing the door, her phone started ringing. As she answered, she admired the diamond ring on her hand under the light. "Yeah." I took all his stuff, gave Jason a new phone, deleted all mutual friends. "We're moving in a week, to W City, and never coming back." She was just an orphan, dead and buried in the soil, who would remember her? The doctor said, as long as he doesn't see anything related to her, he won't remember. The she Molly mentioned, could it be me? And Jason, has he forgotten me? Chapter 2. I died trying to save someone. On the day Jason invited me to dinner, I saw a girl drowning. This area was about to be demolished, remote and desolate, with few people by the riverside at night. I jumped into the river to save her, but she pushed me down into the water. In the struggle, my head seemed to hit a rock at the bottom of the river. My head hurt, water filled my lungs, and with my last bit of strength, I pushed her to the shore. Before losing consciousness, I saw her frantically take out her phone, but she turned it off as soon as the screen lit up. It seemed like she wanted to call for help, then changed her mind. I couldn't see her face clearly, only clutching onto the hem of her purple floral skirt, hoping she would save me. But the suffocation made it hard to breathe, and my consciousness slowly faded away. She made a decision and kicked me away. In the end, I couldn't even see her face clearly, only her hurried figure running away. She was wearing a purple floral sundress. For these 7 days, it felt like I had slept in the dark for a very long time, waking up to see Molly smiling brightly in front of the mirror. She was doing her makeup when a message from Jason popped up on her phone. He asked to meet her at the restaurant where I couldn't keep the appointment. I couldn't care less about Jason now, I just wanted to go home and see my grandmother. I'm not here anymore, and I'm afraid she won't be able to handle this shock. But I found out that I couldn't leave Molly at all. It's like being trapped by an invisible wall, making me stay by Molly's side. Yet, I only met Molly once. Molly was Jason's junior and also a fellow villager. Almost everyone knew about the beautiful sports student who fell for Jason at first sight. The fried chicken near Jason's school was delicious. I went to eat fried chicken with him a few times, and Molly saw us. When I took the bus back to school, she struck up a conversation with me. "You're Karen from the neighboring public security university, right? I heard you live in Yunxiao community. What a coincidence, I used to live there too." She flipped her hair and reached out from above. "I like Jason, he said you two are good friends, so can you help me ask him out?" The phrase, "good friends," struck a chord in my heart. Holding the fried chicken, I lifted my head and looked at her seriously. "No, if you like him, that's your business, you should tell him yourself." Later, I heard that she confessed to Jason and got rejected. It's strange, I only saw her once, why am I tied to her of all people? Chapter 3. I sat on the couch, waiting for Molly to finish showering. She was drying her hair when she pulled out a box from under the desk. Inside were Jason's things. I immediately recognized the dog wooden sculpture, because I have a cat one. It was a pear, with an affectionate dog sticking to an aloof cat. Touching the dog wooden sculpture, memories that should have belonged to Jason suddenly flooded into my mind. It was during summer vacation in high school, when our class organized a trip to the neighboring water town. My grandmother couldn't come due to mobility issues, so I asked Jason to come with me. When I wanted to buy the cat wooden sculpture, Jason teased me, saying it was all made in Iwu, and I had to carry it back, not minding the weight. I didn't tell him, but this aloof cat looked a lot like Jason. I settled the bill and left. He picked up the dog wooden sculpture, looked at the dog, then at my back, and suddenly curved his lips. "Boss, I'll take this." "What did you buy?" I playfully wanted to see what was in his bag. "Bought a bottle of water." He dodged. On the swaying bus ride back, I slept deeply with my head tilted back. He leaned against the window, quietly gripping the dog wooden sculpture in his backpack. Turns out he bought the dog after all. Without even looking, Molly tossed the dog into the trash. She continued scrolling down. As she went further down, it got older, but was well preserved. There were photos of Jason's mom, who looked a lot like him. Back when he was in school, boys would even bully him because he was fair-skinned, didn't talk much, excelled academically, and was popular with girls, making him even more out of place. There were also silver rings that Jason's mom wore and a broken blue hair tie. 5 cents a pack, a cheap and common type of hair tie. I stood there dumbfounded, memories from middle school, the wind carrying the scent of campus plane trees whistling through the 8 years of time, suddenly hit me. It was during a PE class 100-meter race, my hair tie broke. I didn't pay much attention, ran to the finish line, and borrowed one from a classmate. A hair tie, something I didn't pay much attention to, and I went hand in hand with a classmate, chatting and laughing. And now I see the 17-year-old Jason. He squatted on the track, holding that broken hair tie that hadn't loosened, secretly clasping it in his hand. He placed the hair tie and his mother's belongings together. "Mom, I like a girl now. Do you remember Karen? I went to her house for dinner, and you said you really liked her. I also really like her." The 17-year-old Jason blushed and smiled. I should have been happy, ecstatic that my secret crush was coming true. But for some reason, I just stood there blankly, tears suddenly streaming down my face. Before I could look at them again, the hair tie and the ring were both thrown into the trash by Molly. I wanted to pick out Jason's mom's photos and the ring, but I watched helplessly as my hands futilely searched through the trash. "Don't throw them. You can't throw them. Please." I shouted loudly, desperately hugging the trash can. But she couldn't see me. Molly passed through my arms, tying up the trash bag. The garbage truck arrived at 8 o'clock, and she watched as that bag of memories, cherished by Jason, along with countless foul-smelling garbage, was all dumped into the garbage truck. She casually stretched and yawned. Jason timely called, his tone unusually gentle. Molly, I've found a house in City W, as you suggested. We'll move there next week. Well, of course it's for you, the gift agreement is also ready. But I've thought about it, from now on, it will be just the three of us. Wait, did he say the three of us? Does he still remember my grandmother? Why three of us? You're talking nonsense again. Molly patiently corrected him. It's me, my parents, and you, that's four people. Sorry, after the fall last time, my memory is a bit confused, I keep remembering some fragments. You're always so suspicious, the doctor said it's the sequela of your head injury, you'll have a lot of delusions. Don't say such things in the future, okay? Molly impatiently adjusted her hair. Jason apologized cautiously, as if afraid of making her angry. I won't say it again, please don't be mad at me, okay? In the eyes of others, Jason is reserved, handsome, and successful in his career. Only I know that Jason is someone who lacks security. He never believes he deserves to be loved. Chapter 4. I met Jason when I was 13 years old. That summer when I was 13, he moved to our neighborhood. Our neighborhood was very old, with cheap rent, and mostly inhabited by elderly people. Jason's family seemed out of place. After dinner, people loved to gossip about his family. I heard that they used to live in a villa, but later got cheated in business, accumulated a lot of debt, and his dad fell into despair, turning to alcohol and then becoming abusive. As neighbors gossiped in the yard, Jason happened to walk past me. It was a hot summer evening during summer vacation. I was squatting by my grandmother's feet, munching on watermelon, and when I looked up, I saw his slender figure carrying a heavy school bag, making him appear even more desolate and gloomy. He pursed his lips, with a bruise on his face, seemingly ignoring the sympathy around him. How can someone be so harsh on a child? The women clucked their tongues in sympathy. That day, the teacher had just taught an idiom called, standing out like a crane among chickens. As Jason took a stride like a crane, he completely disregarded me, a little chicken. I forgot to even eat my watermelon, feeling like he was an unattainable flower on a high peak, a world apart from those boys who only knew how to snort and eat spicy snacks. Jason's family didn't interact with anyone. It wasn't until New Year's Eve when his mother and he were kicked out by his father. Jason was only wearing a thin shirt, and his mother was even barefoot. Everyone in the neighborhood stood by the windows watching the commotion. My grandmother heard the commotion and quickly pulled Jason and his mother into our house, not forgetting to scold the neighbors. Go away, why are you staring? It's New Year's, have some decency. No one dared to mess with my grandmother in our neighborhood, she was a grumpy and stubborn old lady. While other elderly ladies enjoyed retirement pensions, she didn't. My parents divorced when I was very young, and after my father sacrificed himself, she set up a stall in the market to sell the vegetables she grew to support my education. In her words, she didn't rely on anyone, she was tough. My usually stingy grandmother brightened up, warming up the room in an instant. I vacated my room for them. I looked for some alcohol and iodine at home and handed it to Jason's mother. Thank you, Karen. She took it with both hands. Jason's mother was very beautiful, even in distress, exuding a sense of calmness that made me understand where Jason's distinguished quality came from. Jason raised his head, and I saw that his brow was swollen, almost covering his eyes. His eyes were hit by the buckle of that man's belt. Later, the doctor said a bit more to the side, and he would have gone blind. I gasped. It must have been painful when the alcohol was applied. But Jason didn't utter a word. I cautiously asked him. Brother, are you not in pain? Long after, I found out that when Jason was being beaten, if he made a sound, his father would beat him even worse. Maybe he had been asked many times, he didn't even look at me. Used to it. The indifference and numbness in his eyes tugged at my heart. I'm not someone who cries easily, but for some reason, tears welled up in my eyes. Hey. Don't cry. Jason looked a little flustered, quick on his feet, suddenly pointing to a photo on the wall of my dad and me. Is that your dad? So handsome. In the picture, my dad was wearing a police uniform holding me. That was 3 years ago, before he sacrificed himself. Right? My dad is so handsome. Jason probably couldn't figure out how a girl's tears just flowed so easily. If he were here, he'd catch all the bad guys like your dad. But he's not here. Seeing my tears about to fall again, Jason was on edge. But I'll be a good cop like my dad in the future. When that happens, I'll catch your dad, and he won't dare to hit you again. Okay. Seeing me not crying, Jason breathed a sigh of relief. I chatted with Jason, and at some point, Jason's mother stood behind us. She looked at me, smiled gently, and said, "Karen, can you help Auntie take care of Jason?" "I'll go help Grandma." I nodded. A steaming bowl of rice was served. Jason and his mother spent the new year at my house. After that, Jason often ate at my house. Chapter 5. The classmates at school knew that Jason was like an older brother to me, even asking me to help deliver love letters. At that time, I didn't understand what it meant to like someone. I just felt that when Jason wore the same school uniform, he looked handsome. I just felt uncomfortable with those love letters. But I still handed them to him. When I pulled out the first love letter, Jason didn't look at me, just tapped the pen tip on the desk, leaving a blotch of ink on the paper. By the time I got to the third letter, Jason's face darkened, telling me to stop, not to hand anymore. "Don't you want to open and read it?" "I don't want to." I don't know why, but when he said he wouldn't look, I felt a little happy. Over the years, I never knew if Jason liked me or not. Because Jason rarely showed his emotions, except for that one time when he was eating at my house. He accidentally broke the bowl containing soy milk. When that bowl shattered, he instinctively protected his head. His body instantly stiffened, his face turning pale. Later, I found out that if Jason broke something at home, his father would beat him severely. In Jason's home, a bowl, a chopstick, were more important than him. But my grandma didn't scold me, she first looked at our legs, urgently reminding me and Jason not to move around, not to get hurt. He looked at me quietly. That was the first time I saw such genuine sadness in Jason's eyes. The kind of sadness of not being loved. After Grandma cleaned up, a new bowl of soy milk was brought to the table. I watched him drink that bowl of soy milk, not lifting it for a long time. I thought that bowl of soy milk must have been salted by tears. But neither of us mentioned it. Later, in the summer vacation of Jason's second year of high school, that beast threatened to break Jason's hand before the college entrance exam, to see how he would take the test. That night when I came back from school, I saw Jason's mother wearing long sleeves. She asked me like she did on New Year's Eve. "Karen, can you help Auntie take care of Jason?" I thought Jason was coming to my house for dinner again tonight. I nodded. The police came the next day. Because that night, Jason's mother meticulously prepared dinner for her husband, mixing in a bottle of pesticide. Before dinner that day, she gently touched Jason's head. "Go find Karen, Mom talked to her." Later, Jason ranked 10th in the province and 1st in the city, entering the best university in the capital. During Jason's senior year in college, I got accepted to the capital's police university. To repay his father's debts to the workers, Jason started a business in college. Those years I don't know how much he suffered. And after I graduated from university, I would take over my father's badge and become a police officer. Jason and I both have our own beliefs and goals. I want to wait until our lives are on the right track before telling him my feelings. If he rejects me, I'll say I was joking. "Jason, how could you take it seriously?" If he agrees, I'm going to throw myself into his arms, telling him that secretly loving someone is a very hard thing. If there hadn't been that accident. Chapter 6. Lately, I watched helplessly as Molly blurred his memory. I like sunflowers, and she said she liked them too. I often wear a white dress, and she said Jason's memory was confused, that she liked wearing dresses, but not white ones. If Jason questioned her, she would hysterically get angry, blaming Jason for being careless, or resort to giving him the silent treatment. Jason always had to meekly beg her not to ignore him. When Molly talked on the phone with her friends, she sounded quite pleased. In the past, I chased after him and he didn't know how to appreciate it. Now he's begging me like a dog. What's this? A husband chasing fire station. They were moving away tomorrow. If what Molly said was true, as long as they went to City W, to a completely unfamiliar environment, Jason would never think of me again. If I followed Molly, I would never see Grandma again. But I'm just a spirit, unable to do anything. I watched her pack Jason's few belongings. When Jason opened the door, I desperately grabbed his hand. He paused, as if sensing something, then smiled and shook his head. What are you dragging on for? Molly frowned, arms crossed. Nothing. The last bag was placed in the car. Jason gripped the steering wheel, hesitating. Molly, I don't know why, but I don't really want to go to City W. I joyfully lifted my head. Jason. Molly's face darkened. I've been tolerating your amnesia, your temper. I've sorted everything out, you didn't say anything earlier or later. Fine, I'll go by myself. Molly, don't be angry, I just feel a bit unwell, let's go together. Jason was afraid she would leave him. The car started, the scenery slowly receding. We passed by the street we used to walk home from school, where there was a delicious minced meat noodle shop. The boss lady knew me, I took Jason there to eat, and she would always give him a spoonful of extra minced meat. We passed by the high school we attended together, the students on the playground at noon were scattered, their uniforms hanging loosely around their waists. Those memories of the past were vivid in my mind, but Jason just calmly drove the car. He would never have a chance to remember me. Tears welled up in my eyes. Suddenly, an abrupt stop. What's wrong? Molly was startled. He stared blankly to the left. I followed her gaze. It was Grandma. Under the scorching sun, her face was sunburned, her body soaked with sweat. She was wearing that rough printed t-shirt, with a missing person notice printed on it. My photo was on the missing person notice. She politely bowed to every hurried passerby, handing them the flyers in her hands, pleading with them to take it and have a look. This was a newly opened shopping mall, people were rushing like a fast-flowing stream. No one stopped for her, let alone took her flyers. She stood there, like a stubborn stone in a stream. A few people took them absent-mindedly and then threw them on the ground. She slowly picked them up, neatly arranged them, and handed them to the next person. Ignoring Molly shouting behind her, Jason unbuckled his seatbelt dazedly and walked over. Trembling, Jason asked the mall security guard. Her granddaughter has been dead for a long time, we all know. At first, they said she was missing, searched for several days and found her, but the old lady's mind is confused. The girl who died is not her granddaughter is just missing, she comes here every day to distribute flyers. She's old, quite pitiful, she even picks up the flyers from the ground, as long as it doesn't affect hygiene, we just let her be. I know that young lady too, quite promising, just like her father, became a police officer. Do you know her? Jason looked at the flyer and his eyes turned red the next second. I know her. Chapter 7. The midday summer sun shone on his head. He held the flyer, standing there blankly, sweating profusely but unaware of it. Before I could take another look at Jason and Grandma, Molly had quietly gotten out of the car, wanting to take the car to the airport herself. The next moment, Jason snatched her bag. Why did you lie to me? She's dead. What difference does it make if you remember or not? Will she come back to life if you remember her? Suddenly, Jason seemed to remember something, and he called the police. He said there should be strong evidence about my death. What evidence? Molly suddenly became nervous. Ignoring her, Jason hurriedly got into the car, leaving her behind. Before I could catch up, I passively followed Molly onto the high-speed train. On the third day, when Molly was arrested in City W while preparing to go abroad, strangely, as I saw two police officers walking towards Molly, I felt my body becoming lighter. But I couldn't hear what they were arguing about. All I could see were the memories of those 7 days. All people's memories. After I disappeared for 2 days, an old man fishing under the bridge found me. As drowning incidents are common in summer, I was initially assumed to have drowned while swimming in the river. But Grandma and Jason didn't believe it. Grandma refused to identify the body, insisting that it wasn't me. Jason couldn't believe I would drown. We had plans for dinner that day, and I was all dressed up in that white dress, so why would I go swimming? Grandma clutched a photo of me and my father, pleading with his former colleagues to search again, hoping against hope. Jason searched tirelessly for me for 2 days, and finally, in the morgue, he saw a glimpse of the white dress. He looked up, dazed, at the glaring midday sun, then collapsed heavily on the curb. But the truth didn't unravel as easily as in TV shows. It took a massive police effort post the homicide, combing through every detail, as no conclusion could be drawn without concrete evidence. Coincidentally, there was a scrap collector near the riverbank. His children had set up surveillance cameras because his findings were often stolen. A corner of that surveillance footage captured the events of that night. That video became crucial evidence of Molly's premeditated murder. It turned out that after Jason rejected her confession, Molly initially contemplated suicide by jumping into the river. She chose the area where Jason and I grew up, hoping to make either Jason or me feel guilty. But seeing me jump in to save her sparked a terrible idea in her mind. Originally, I wanted to knock her out before rescuing her, but she was a better swimmer than I thought. In the struggle, she repeatedly pushed my head underwater. She went back and burned that purple dress. With no family around, Molly easily got hold of Jason's house keys while he was unconscious in the hospital. Like an intrusive stalker, during her secret infatuation with Jason, she obtained his address and personal information. By the time I went to Jason's university to find him, Molly had already gathered all my details in a matter of days. Later, during police questioning, Molly casually remarked, "I didn't ask her to save me. Anyway, I was going to die, so why not just drag her down with me?" She was so foolishly cute, risking her life to push me back to shore. I actually thought about calling the police, but then I felt like this was a chance given to me by fate to keep on living. As the final words of Molly's statement were recorded, I found myself free, able to move on from Molly. Perhaps because justice had finally been served. But I also noticed my hands gradually becoming transparent. I suppose my time here is limited. Chapter 8. With everything settled, life went on as usual. Grandma still set up her small stand in the vegetable market. She just never gave up on finding me. That piece of clothing with my photo on it, she still wears it. Customers at the vegetable market took her flyers, and she gladly packed some extra scallions or gave some change. She's still as stubborn as ever. Neighbors advised her to burn some paper for me, or else I would have no money underground, living miserably. Grandma never listened. Whoever tried to persuade her, she would scold them. Phew. What dead? My Karen didn't die at all. Who died? Whoever died, my Karen wouldn't die. Back and forth, no one dared to confront her. People came and went at the market. When there were no customers, Grandma sat at her stall, dozing off quietly, as serene as a pebble on a riverbed. At noon, the market closed, and Grandma picked up her small bundle, riding her tricycle back home. No one was home. She stir-fried some vegetables, staring blankly at the TV, folding paper money. The TV was on, the old fan creaking. I sat by her bed, watching her fold each piece carefully, folding until the sunlight outside went from dazzling to dim. She packed the paper money in a fertilizer bag, slowly loading it onto her tricycle. She drew 2 open circles on the barren land. You short-lived ghost. Just like your father, both short-lived debt-collecting ghosts. Why did you have to save someone? Why did you have to show off your abilities? She hunched over, took out some paper money, and began burning it while muttering. But even the wind was mischievous, blowing the paper money from her feet out of the plastic bag. I thought she would get angry, would shout at the wind. But she didn't. She joyfully looked up, glancing around. Karen, is that you? Are you here to see Grandma? She turned, looking at me, but she couldn't see me. The wind suddenly stopped, unwilling to respond to an old woman's superstitions. She stood there blankly for a long time, then suddenly wiped away a tear. It's not Grandma who died. I reached out my hand, wanting to hug her. But my arm just passed through her. Chapter 9. Jason often came to see Grandma, bringing many things each time. He pushed open the door, and the feathers of the dream catcher by the window gently swayed. My belongings were neatly arranged, as if I had just stepped out and would return soon. As usual, he replaced the bouquet in the vase on the table with a new bunch of creamy sunflowers. The sunflowers were warm and bright, their delicate petals still glistening with dew. Jason didn't rummage through my things. At a glance, he noticed the cat statue on the bookshelf, lifting its head with aloof pride. Karen, you definitely wouldn't know. While you weren't paying attention, I bought the remaining puppy. I thought that puppy looked a lot like you. But I can't find her anymore. On the tail of the cat, there were 3 small rings that I bought for $10 each at the stall. He took out the confession ring from his pocket, gestured towards my ring, and even chuckled at himself. Sorry, I bought the ring too big. I was looking at it, it should be this size. Perhaps because he had never held my hand. He sat there alone, talking to me about many things. He said that when Molly deceived him, he often dreamed of a girl wearing a white dress, holding a bunch of creamy sunflowers. Although he couldn't see her face, he felt like she was always smiling. He said that he bought a house in City W, just like how we used to joke around, that if we couldn't find partners in the future, the 3 of us would live together like a family. He said that he never believed in gods or Buddhas, but after I disappeared, he donated a lot of money to temples. He knelt down at the foot of the mountain, hoping to exchange everything for my return, but he couldn't understand the chants of the little monks. He said that everything was impermanent, like a dream, like bubbles, like dew, like lightning. Why would it be a bubble? It was clearly my everything. Is it because I bought the ring too big and mistook the person, that's why you're angry and not coming? The twilight light streamed in. It shone on his slender profile, casting a shadow under his long lashes. He was clearly smiling self-deprecatingly, but I felt like he was crying. Like a tree withering from the heart, swaying and on the verge of falling. Karen, I really miss you. But I haven't dreamt of you for a long time. My body felt lighter and lighter, I extended my gradually transparent hand and gently embraced him. Jason, forget about me, go find a lifelong partner to grow old with. Now, you have the ability to love yourself and your family. Wholeheartedly love each other, and you will have a warm home, not worrying about having nowhere to go in winter, or about being beaten and scolded. Your biggest worry will be what to eat tonight, or your wife asking you silly questions at night. Like if she turned into a bread dog, would you still love her, and no matter what you answer, she'll be a little upset. Just don't think of me anymore. It was as if he sensed something and lifted his head in a daze. But all that responded to him was the sound of the wind and the gentle trembling of sunflower petals. Having seen too much of those melodramatic chase and catch fire scenes in substitute literature. Sometimes I would also think that love is possession, that it's all about him or destruction if you can't have it. Actually, no, love is about fulfillment, about giving your all, yet still feeling indebted. All those things I couldn't give you, I hope someone else can. I couldn't hold your hand in a white wedding dress, couldn't accompany you until old age, couldn't give you the happy and blissful home I had imagined. All those things I couldn't give, I hope you have them. The road I couldn't walk with you, the scenery I couldn't see with you, I'm willing to be forgotten by you, to hold another good girl's hand. Even if I had the chance again, I would still go and save someone. Grandma taught me to be kind, not to mention this is my faith and mission. I just feel a little unwilling. Why is it that when everything was almost complete, luck was just a little bit short? Fate is about to break us apart. It won't let us stay together. My time is probably running out. One last look at the human world. At dusk, I saw the boys and girls playing on the playground, the sound of pots and pans in the kitchen, and the aroma of food. I saw a young couple holding hands with their child, the child mischievous, insisting on jumping 2 tiles at a time. The evening breeze lifted my blood-stained white skirt, and the gentle moonlight shone on the hem of my skirt. Jason, I delayed you for 8 years in the past, and this time, it's really goodbye. I regret not being able to see you, this proud person, blushing and confessing your feelings. It's a bit regretful indeed. You liking me, these past few days, my ears have practically developed calluses from hearing about it. But I also like you, do you know that?
Jason's side story. After Karen left 2 years ago, I have been staying in the small town we grew up in. I realized that even without amnesia, people are constantly forgetting the past. It's like the brain's protective mechanism, slowly making me forget those sleepless nights. My memories are like a piece of walking ice, constantly melting after separating from her. Sometimes in my dreams, Karen's face is starting to blur. Fortunately, this city is filled with traces of Karen's and my past. I would spend an afternoon sitting in the noodle shop Karen loved, staring blankly at the school gate. The lady boss and boss of that shop had their second child, a chubby little sister, whose eyes would squint when she smiled. Back in school, many people liked Karen. She was like a little sun, kind, and just bright and dazzling. Once in school, a boy spilled milk on Karen's deskmate, that weak-looking girl, and the homeroom teacher defended the boy, saying he was just mischievous and did it to get her attention because he liked her. Since the boy's father was an official and the girl's family had no money or power, the homeroom teacher knew who to please. Then, Karen, as the class monitor, poured juice over the boy's head, saying she just wanted to get his attention. That weak-looking girl, in the 2 years since Karen's absence, I have also bumped into her a few times. She and I brushed past each other at Karen's grave, nodding in acknowledgement. She bent down and placed a bunch of white chrysanthemums. At the sports meet, Karen, who won first place in high jump, had a ribbon in her mouth. Her hair tied up in a ponytail, exuding youthful energy, like a never-dying little sun. Many young boys liked this kind of Karen, and 1 or 2 classmates of the same year as us would slyly ask me about her. On weekends, I was telling her stories, and a few love letters slipped out of the bag. My heart felt a bit sour. I don't like anyone. She looked at me seriously. Really? Many years later, when I rewatched Dream of the Red Chamber, seeing all the unspoken thoughts of male lead, it was just a simple don't worry. Back then, in order to prepare for exams, I hastily thought it was just idle talk. Now looking back, I wonder if back then, she also wanted me to not worry. That old man who provided video evidence, occasionally I would buy some noodles to go see him. Speaking of which, I wonder if it's fate at work. It was Karen's sophomore year, and the area near the Yun Bridge was also going to be demolished. The number of residents decreased, and some who couldn't afford rent ended up living in the abandoned houses waiting to be demolished. There was a very pitiful old man, with children who didn't care for him, picking up trash every day to make a living. He would collect trash from several streets, and surprisingly, there were people who would steal from him. That old man is very pitiful. Karen said, taking a bite of fried chicken. If I die in the line of duty in the future, can you take care of my grandmother for me? Don't let her be bullied like that old man. I gave her a hard tap on the head. I didn't want to hear her say anything about death. I installed a camera and a door lock for the old man, telling him to call the police if anyone tried to steal from him. Karen didn't know about this. I told her that the old man's children had come back and installed locks and cameras for him, so no one could bully him anymore. I knew it. How could they not take care of the elderly? Karen held a kind of almost naive goodwill towards everyone. So when she saw Molly fall into the water, she didn't hesitate to jump in. This silly girl. And Karen probably always thought I didn't like her. Because I always felt unworthy. That summer vacation, I got into the best university. The first time I took a taxi to the train station by myself, I was a bit anxious. Others were escorted by their parents, carrying big and small bags. I was the only one carrying a washed-out canvas bag with only 2 changes of clothes inside. It was a bit out of place, but I didn't care. Because Karen came to see me off. But when I looked up, Karen, this little crybaby, started to tear up again. What's with the tears, really? You have my WeChat, you can ask me about any questions you don't understand, I'll come back during my break. Tears fell from Karen's eyes. I was about to say something to break the awkward atmosphere. But Karen wiped away her tears first, tapped on my car window. Jason, be happy, okay? Jason. Driver, please drive faster. I frowned and rolled up the car window. Jason. How can I live without you? The driver smiled and glanced at Karen waving from the rearview mirror. Your girlfriend is really funny. Girlfriend. For some reason, watching her desperately waving hands, I suddenly thought, how warm it would be to hold her in my hands. What's wrong? She's not your girlfriend? She is my girlfriend. I opened my phone, thinking about the quirky emoji she had added for me. I imitated her and found a small heart and a sunflower from my phone, putting them after Karen's name. I don't know why, but I felt a bit guilty. I put away my phone, but couldn't help the smile on my lips. I quietly watched over my sunflower, waiting for her to bloom. I hope that in the best years of her life, she walks the path she wants without being disturbed by my feelings. No matter how late it is, I will always wait for her. In my freshman year, Karen's grandmother had a stroke. The next day she still had to work, so I took a night bus back and forth, asking a neighbor to deliver the 10,000 yuan I had borrowed, but not to mention it was from me. Is this money to buy a wife? The neighbor auntie joked with a big smile. No, it's just for her. Her grandmother has already set her sights on you, no one else. If you give her so much money, will she still run? It's not like that. As long as she doesn't like it, she's not willing, then it's not possible. Love is love, even a little emotional coercion is not acceptable. Fortunately, her grandmother recovered in half a month. Besides speaking a bit slowly, there were no other issues. Karen didn't know about this, neither did her grandmother. In fact, I had forgotten about it until the other day when I ran into that auntie. She kept sighing, saying everyone saw us as a couple, it was just a shame. She tentatively tried to introduce me to a girl, saying she had a lively and cheerful personality like Karen. I smiled and shook my head. Auntie, you know I only like Karen, don't delay others. It's strange, the countless times I didn't dare to confess to her, I could blurt it out to a stranger. Karen had told me she would definitely get into the Capital University of Public Security. Sure enough, on the day the acceptance letter arrived, she excitedly called me out to celebrate. Downstairs, she proudly shouted at me. Jason, see, I told you it wasn't long distance. At that moment, someone in the neighborhood was celebrating a child's success, setting off fireworks. The fireworks lit up her proud and radiant smile. She turned back, complaining. You won't treat me to a meal again, why are you dragging your feet? I'm not dragging my feet, I'm hiding my feelings. After 4 years of university and 2 years after graduation, I paid off my parents' debts and saved a lot of money. When I was in debt, I never dared to speak to her. Now that I have money, I bought my first decent piece of clothing and stepped into a jewelry store and a flower shop for the first time. Standing at the counter, the saleswoman smiled and recommended rings to me. If the size is not right and there are no scratches or damages, you can bring your wife to exchange it. I only did it for the service, not because of that word wife, and paid. I knew she liked sunflowers. Do you need help arranging flowers? Is it for your girlfriend? Can't sunflowers be given to someone? This was my first time giving flowers. I didn't understand the nuances of flower giving, afraid of making a mistake. Seeing my hesitation, the store clerk smiled. The sunflower symbolizes silent love, love that cannot be expressed. It's very suitable for giving to a girlfriend. The love that couldn't be expressed for these 7 years. I'll take this one. The bouquet was beautiful, but unfortunately, Karen could never see it again. Just like this love that couldn't be expressed for 7 years. Then many things happened in those years. Like Molly being sentenced to death, like her grandmother finally no longer looking for her. Perhaps it was a sudden act of mercy from the gods, her grandmother developed Alzheimer's disease. Her memory went back to before Karen's death. Sometimes she would think Karen's father was still alive, coming home for dinner, so she cooked many dishes. Sometimes she thought Karen's kindergarten was having an event, so she sewed a small hat for her to wear for the performance. In her memory, they were all alive, just not coming home. She no longer wore that t-shirt with Karen's picture on it, no longer handed out flyers at the market, and she didn't cry much anymore. Another year passed, Qingming Festival. I stood in front of her grave and placed a bouquet of creamy sunflowers for her. The fine rain blew through the world, grass grew, birds flew, and children laughed and played with kites. The wind rustled in the cemetery, footsteps hurried in the world. The river of time flowed incessantly, people's steps never stopped. Only she forever stayed in that summer year. Karen. Jason really likes you, has liked you for 9 years. Do you like him back?